Hello friends and fellow gamers, it is MKxJUMP here, and today's video is a follow-up from a video made over a year ago. It is now 2020, and that video was made in 2018. Back in a meta before Ada came out. Aspen wasn't even released, I don't think, and it was just a time very different to what we have now. The biggest problem hero for CC was Valentino, and every team had him. They all had him at speed and energy, and he was fast and nasty and would stun your heroes, but there was a way around him because he had a predictable form of CC on his active skill, whereby his 100% chance to stun would hit slots 5 or 6. And therefore, if you put crowd control immune heroes in slots 5 and 6, your team was genuinely going to win a lot more against the teams that didn't, because you were less weak and less vulnerable to Valentino. Now in 2020, no one plays Valentino really in competitive teams, and the biggest threat out there is actually Amun-Ra. So we're going to be talking a lot about the main CC weaknesses in today's meta, such as Amun-Ra, and how you can play around that, and the biggest changes that have happened over pretty much the last almost 18 months. Crazy. So let's learn how to build teams in 2020, because if we're honest, everything's changed. So before we get into the details, let's recap on a few things. Your heroes on your team will be put into 6 different slots. Slot 1 across to slot 6. Now these slots are going to be very important, because that's how I'm going to refer to these heroes and their positions. So slots 1 and 2 are your front line, and slots 3, 4, 5 and 6 are your back line. Now slot 1 is important because it's the first in the slot order, and the smallest number, or the first number in the slot order, is the one that generally gets hit by basic attacks. There are other kinds of attacks as well that will hit different heroes. So some heroes like Kameth, for example, have a basic attack that hits the backline. Other heroes like Demon Hunter have spread attacks that hit random heroes. Now the important thing is the majority of basic attacks hit your slot 1 hero. So that hero is going to be taking the most amount of hits. So the assumption there for most players is, oh, I'm going to put a hero with loads of health in this slot so that they don't die, to be technically what we can call a tank. However, that's not necessarily the best option. I mentioned this in the video previously. A hero in slot 1 gets hit the most, but that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be taking the most damage, because a lot of heroes now deal most of their damage from active skills that hit loads of opponents. And these active skills can hit anybody and will crit randomly on anybody, and it's no longer really slot 1 that you need to worry about. It's kind of everyone's going to get hit. So you don't want to put a really squishy hero in slot 1, unless of course you need to use an ability where they die, but whether it's a medium health hero or a high health hero doesn't matter. The important thing is the hit frequency. They'll be getting hit the most. So heroes that benefit from getting hit are heroes that you want to put in slot 1. So if we look at a hero that's popular right now, such as Cthulhu burns opponents every time he gets hit by them. So obviously you want him to get hit the most so he can burn the most opponents. Likewise, Horus counterattacks after he's blocked 3 times. He's more likely to block if he's getting hit more often. So of course you want to get him hit the most, so we put people like Horus in slot 1. So this is why you'll see heroes that are naturally tanky anyway, such as Cthulhu and Horus, in slot 1, because they react to getting hit. And that's the important thing. Slot 1 should be a reactive hero. And that's what I said in the last video. However, things aren't that simple anymore. Heroes such as Amun-Ra and Dark Arthandal are exceptionally popular right now, and they CC the front line. Specifically, Dark Arthandal's basic attack has an incredibly high chance to petrify the slot 1 hero. Amun-Ra's active skill hits both frontline heroes, and it will also have a chance to petrify them. So slot 1 and 2 are at increased risk of CC, especially in late game where heroes like Amun-Ra are pretty much in every single team. So it's no longer strategically viable just to have a reactive hero in slot 1 if they're not going to do anything, because they're CC'd. So if you look at a hero like King Barton, he counterattacks every time he's hit. However, if he's CC'd, that's not going to happen. So he's no longer probably best putting in slot 1 against heroes like DA and Amun-Ra, because the chance of him getting CC'd is incredibly high. Now if you also look, a long time ago we used to put DA in slot 1 because we wanted to get her hit the most, because she buffs herself when she takes damage. Now this again isn't the case anymore, because if she gets petrified or CC'd, you're not going to benefit from the active skill, and she's more likely to get petrified or CC'd when she's sat in the front line. So that brings us to our second conclusion. The front line is no longer as safe as it used to be. We used to be afraid of heroes like Valentino, who could hit the backline with his active skill, and heroes like Kameth, who were regularly basic attacking or active skilling against the backline heroes with an incredibly high chance to petrify. These heroes are no longer meta relevant. They're not around anymore. You don't really see people using them unless it's in early game. And on top of that, Frontline is just getting hit by Amun-Ra's and DAs a lot more, is what I'm trying to say. So the original assumption that slot 2 was a safety slot, because the backline was getting hit all the time, is no longer the case. Slot 2 is just as at risk, because of Amun-Ra's active skill. So if you're facing Amun-Ra's, you don't want to be putting a hero that needs to go off with their active skill that is slower than Amun-Ra in slot 2. So highly squishy, highly dependable heroes whose active skills are crucial to your strategy don't want to go in slot 2 anymore. In fact, they want to go on the backline in, surprisingly guys, the opposite to what I said in the last video, in slots 5 and 6. Why 5 and 6? Well, heroes get attacked by basic attacks in their slot order. So if there's a hero in slot 1, they'll get targeted. If that hero dies, it'll then go to slot 2, and then 3, then 4, then 5, and 6. So basically, 5 and 6 are the least likely to get hit because you need 1, 2, 3, and 4 to die before they even get hit by basic attacks. So to maximize your safety, it's best to put them on the back line. So I hope that clarifies a little something that was a little confusing. So if you go back and watch that video and take what I said in that video as lore, then you're going to be building your teams badly in the current meta because it's no longer like that. Now, I've seen some people running some really interesting choices now with heroes that they put on their backline because of that. Like Mim, for example. Mim is actually better in slot 2 because Mim has that CC protection, which he can then just ignore Amun-Ra's active skill. Hell, there are some people that even put Mim in slot 1 to be completely CC immune from attacks from DA or from Amun-Ra. Now, I do keep talking about DA and Amun-Ra a lot, and that's because they have targeted CC, and they're meta-relevant. You've got to remember there are a lot of heroes out there that do have targeted CC, such as Corpse Demon, such as Kameth, that really aren't relevant anymore. So people don't use them, and therefore they're not a threat. However, it's a lot of talk about CC right now, and there's something in the back of a lot of people's minds at the moment, and that's that CC is increasingly less relevant now. And that's good. That's fun. In fact, that's exciting. Why? Because there are 3 things in the meta that have changed since I made that last video. The first one is Purify, which happens when you get a hero to enable 3. Now, Purify removes CC or a negative effect at the end of the round. So that means if a hero that you like is locked in with CC, there is a chance that that CC will be removed by Purify at the end of the round. Now, if they're suffering something like poison or burn or bleed, then that could also be removed. If they're suffering a nasty debuff, that could also potentially be removed. If they've got a mark on them, less so. Depends on the mark. But really, the important thing is that you can actually get out of CC with Purify. As well, Guild Tech was changed a while ago to have a secondary menu, and this secondary menu lets you increase your CC protection up to 20% in different CCs, such as Stun, such as Twine, such as Freeze. Pretty damn good. Petrify's on there as well. Now, that means that people are increasingly more CC protected. If we add to that the fact that the auras have been changed, and you now get CC protection benefits for just having light and dark heroes on your team, you no longer need to have a full dark team or a full light team, there's even more CC protection. And so they're the big main static changes that have happened to CC protection on the whole. The active changes are also found in 2 heroes that have been either reworked or released. So Belrain was reworked to have CC removal in her active skill, which is absolutely nuts and the reason she stepped back in as a meta-defining hero. Secondly, there's Gustin, whose active skill releases his little totem thing, and his totem can remove CC from your heroes, which is great. CC removal is pretty bonkers. It also can remove other negative effects like Purify, so it is similar to a Purify as opposed to Belrain, which literally says, I will remove a CC. And that's why CC is less of a worry. Now, for me personally, you've then got to ask the question of, okay, well, Belrain is the one that removes CC, so it's more crucial that Belrain doesn't get CC'd. Gustin removes CC, so it's more crucial that Gustin doesn't get CC'd. So that's the mindset you need to be having. As well, you really, in PvP, should be giving all your heroes Purify to protect against CC. And I think the fact that there's so much CC protection going around now, that actually your team building should be much more on the mindset of opportunistic positioning with your heroes. Now, what I mean by this is what I said in slot 1, for example. A slot 1 hero will react, and is much more reactive because they get hit more. Now, if you have another reactive hero on your team, you might want to put them in slot 3 or slot 2, so that when the slot 1 hero dies, they become the new most reactive hero. So that's an option. Another option that you guys can have is actually how you order your heroes affects the order they go. Now, I don't know if you know this, it's kind of a secret mechanic in the game that's not widely known because it doesn't often come up, but heroes attack in speed order. So, the fastest hero will go first. Now, if there's a tie between the attacking team and the defending team, the attacker will attack first. Then the defender's heroes will attack that are of the same speed tier. But what happens if there's a tie in your team? What happens if you have a hero in slot 3 that's just as fast as your hero in slot 1? Well, they attack in slot order, meaning slot 1 will go first, then slot 2, then slot 3, then slot 4, etc. Because that's just how the game is programmed. And that means a while ago, people were using heroes like Belrain and Amavor, who you could actually potentially get them to be the same speed, and realizing, well, Amavor gets benefited when a hero uses their active skill, so I'll give an energy artifact to the Belrain, so that then Belrain will use her energy on the same turn as Amavor, but because she's in a higher position than Amavor, she will go first, and then Amavor will charge it with energy, which means he will then follow because he's on the same speed turn, and then he will attack. And that was a very, very clever little strategic thing back when Amavor was great. Now he's not so great, so it's not so important, but that's an important time when actually speed ties do come up. So I'm saying this mainly because, retrospectively, the meta may change, and I just want to keep this video relevant, so that speed ties can actually become a thing in your team, and therefore you should order them depending on the order you want them to attack. And that can also change the way you order your team. So when people ask me now, how should I order my team? The honest answer is it's less crucial than it used to be, because Valentino isn't prominent anymore and his active skill has been changed. Backline at CC isn't as prevalent as it used to be. The main threat now is Amun-Ra. So really only slot 1 and slot 2 need to be CC protected, and actually your backline you've pretty much got free reign, but if you're running heroes like Belrain and Gustin, you don't really have that much to worry about anyway. So actually when it comes to a team positioning front, your team is actually pretty flexible now, and you shouldn't worry so much. The most important hero on your team is your slot 1 hero, so Cthulhu or Horus, and just making sure that your slot 1 hero has some form of CC protection and is able to survive when CC'd. So for example, Cthulhu still uses his passive when he's CC'd. Horus will still break out of CC, because that's what his active skill says. After he blocks 3 times, he breaks out of CC and then counterattacks, so he doesn't even care about CC. And then you also have heroes like Valkyrie, who will actually use a passive skill when they get CC'd. So actually putting them in slot 1 increases the chance of them getting CC'd, so you can benefit from that as well. So it's interesting how you choose where to put your heroes, but generally, the most important thing is, as long as slot 1's okay, that's fine. As long as slot 2 has some form of control immunity, you'll be okay versus Amun-Ra's. And then the backline, just put them in squishiness order, basically. You want your tankiest backline in slot 3, right down to the squishiest one in slot 6. Now, the important thing as well is, if you're not facing Amun-Ra's, slot 2 is still the safest. That's important, because there are so many people who will now go and go, oh, well, I'll just put all my squishy heroes on the backline. You can do that, but slot 2 is still generally one of the safest, because slot 1 heroes are so tanky that they can just protect your slot 2 hero, and actually CC is so varied that it doesn't really matter. But as long as you're not facing Amun-Ra's, slot 2 is okay. You can put a squishy hero in slot 2. But if you, for example, put someone like Doc Arthendal in slot 2, and then they got petrified, you're going to be disappointed. So you just want to make sure that heroes that can either withstand being CC'd or use their active skill quicker than Amun-Ra are in slot 2. Now, I hope that clears things up for you. I know it's a lot of complicatedness, and that your hero positioning, basically the conclusion of this is it doesn't really matter. Which is kind of, it's weird to say that, considering how technical the last video was, that actually the meta's become much more balanced now, and it's less dependent, and there's less strategy really in how you position your team, and it's much more on how you build your team for the different area of the game you're in, whether it's PvE, whether it's PvP. You will find that there are different things that benefit you better in these different areas. Now, I'm going to talk about those in future videos, but generally this is just about hero positioning, so I hope that covers things up for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Bit of a talk at you kind of video. I don't really make those. Well, I actually make a lot of those, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy it, and a lot of you seem to respond to these videos really well. And yeah, if you want to see more content like this, don't be afraid to like and subscribe. It helps me loads, guys. You have no idea how much it helps, because quite frankly, the way I don't know if you know how YouTube algorithm works, but the more a video gets liked or subscribed to, it makes that video more popular and recommended more on YouTube. So it really helps me out if you guys do that. And actually, most of my viewers aren't actually subscribers. So if you are viewing this from the browse section and you're like, oh, who's this guy? Or you've watched some of my videos before and you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please do that. It helps me out loads. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week, and happy idling.